Welcome into Pigskin Perspectives. It is the Thursday edition of this show. I am your host, as always, Nick Burt. Listen, college football, it is officially back. As this is being recorded, there are plentiful college football games on right now. If you wanted to look for those previews of those games and the games that are tomorrow, those are on the previous episode, so go tune into that if you want an idea of what my thoughts were for these games. Today's episode, specifically all the Saturday games, and there are a lot of them. I'm not going to give all my opinions on them, but, I'm going to tell you what time they are and where they're going to be located for you to watch. And we're going to go from there. And any game that I feel like I have some knowledgeable insight that I need to incite on the viewer, I will do that. So, let's just get underway. We're going to do it by time. Maybe later in the year we start doing it by conferences when it's mostly all conference games. But we're going to start out with the noon slate, of course. The first game that I have on here, because this is how ESPN likes to do it. They like to do the ranked teams and then everybody else. Number 2, Michigan is at home hosting East Carolina in game 1 of 3 of Jim Harbaugh's suspension. Not expecting really much from ECU to come Saturday. Michigan's most likely going to win this game by probably 30-35. And that's going to be that. I don't really expect much from Michigan in that game. On ABC, you have number 12, Tennessee, playing Virginia. This game is not at Neyland Stadium, though. This is in Nashville at Nissan Stadium, home of the Tennessee Titans. It's going to be interesting to see how Joe Milton plays in his, one of his first games starting since, he transferred from Michigan 2 years ago. He started, I believe it was 21. He started the first 2 games, got benched. He started the Orange Bowl last year, which got him all this hype for this year. I expect Tennessee to win this game. On Fox, Colorado travel to Fort Worth to face off against TCU, a TCU team that lost a lot of its talent from last year that got them to a national title. Going up against Deion Sanders' first game as head coach of the Buffaloes. Should be an interesting watch. I'm not going to expect a ton from Colorado. I don't think they're going to be that good this year just because you can't build a team in 1 year through the portal. And I think they got a few years before they are winning. If Deion stays there, I feel like he's non-committal with that. On ESPN, number 20, Oklahoma is facing off against Arkansas State. This is it's another one of those games where there's not really much to talk about. Oklahoma will win the game by 20 plus, and hopefully, you get a few good highlights in there, but not going to expect a lot from that. Then you have number 25, Iowa, facing off against Utah State. It's going to be interesting to see if Iowa can score more than, 25 points, since that seems to be a very difficult challenge for them. Cade McNamara, their new quarterback, transferred over from Michigan. Should be interesting to see how he plays and if he can be part of that reason that they end up, getting more than 25 points a game. Should be an interesting watch. On the SEC network, Kentucky host Ball State. I really don't know what to think of this game. I think Kentucky win this game. I don't really see an upset potential there. 2 teams I am not sure on at all this year. Bowling Green at Liberty. This is on CBS Sports Network. Like I said, don't really know about either team, to be honest. On the Big Ten Network, Purdue host Fresno State, and I think this is the first upset potential game of the day. I think Fresno State's better than what people think. And I think Purdue might struggle year one under Ryan Walter. That's why I think Fresno State being an underdog here, I kind of like the idea of them winning this game. Think they have the talent for it. Should be an interesting watch there. Louisiana Tech head to Dallas to face off against SMU. Louisiana Tech obviously played week 0, started off 1-0, beat Florida International. This is SMU's first game of the season. A lot of expectations for this SMU team this year. Going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I still think that they win this game. Another two teams I just don't think are going to be good this year. Northern Illinois traveled to Boston to face off against Boston College. That's on the ACC network. Ohio, after losing to San Diego State in week 0, traveled back home to face off against the LIU Sharks on ESPN+. The Arkansas Razorbacks look to, have a good season under Sam Pittman this year, even though that schedule is going to be quite difficult. They face off against Western Carolina at 1 p.m. on ESPN+. Also at 1 p.m. on who knows what, because I could not find any broadcasting information for this game. I'm assuming it's going to be streamed somewhere, but I don't know where. Air Force host Robert Morris. I expect Air Force to win this game easily. Same with this game. I expect Ole Miss to win this easily as they face off against the Mercer Bears, 2 p.m. on ESPN+. So moving on, out of this grouping, like I said, I think the real only upset potential game is that Fresno State-Purdue game. So moving on, we'll move on to the next slate of games here. We're still in that 2 p.m. window on ESPN+. Jacksonville State, off that huge Week 0 victory, face off against East Tennessee State. I'm expecting Jacksonville State to go 2-0 here. An in-state Iowa battle as Northern Iowa travel to Ames to face off against Iowa State. This might potentially be another one of those upset special games. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think Northern Iowa keep it close. Akron travel to Philadelphia to face off against a Temple team. Neither of these teams I'm not really sure about. Akron, under year 2 of Joe Moorhead, have to show more than they did last year. At 3 p.m. on the Pac-12 network, Oregon, number 15 Oregon, I should say, face off against Portland State. Game 1 of a Heisman campaign for Bo Nix. I'm expecting a lot from Oregon this year. I should be an interesting game to watch, even though it's going to be lopsided. Going to be interesting to see how that offense looks in year 2 under Dan Lanning. In the 3:30 window, number 3, Ohio State, the team I am repping right now, Chris Spielman jersey, Ohio State legend. They travel to Bloomington, Indiana to face off against the Indiana Hoosiers. Kyle McCord was named starting quarterback for Ohio State. I think that's probably the right decision as of now. And I think Ohio State wins this easily. I've said that I think this is Tom Allen's last year at Indiana because I don't think they're going to be good at all. Boise State traveled to Washington. A lot of people are saying Boise State have the potential to pull off the upset here. I just don't see it happening. I don't think they're going to be that good. I think they're going to struggle to get to 8 wins this year. So I think Washington win this pretty easily. The all-famous John F. Kennedy quote, "Why does Rice play Texas? They don't do it because it is easy, but because it was hard." And Rice, once again, face off against Texas. Texas is going to win this game by a lot. JT Daniels, quarterback for Rice. This is his 3rd time playing in Austin for 3 different teams. So that's a stat there. Not going to truly matter, but it's a stat nonetheless. Notre Dame face off against Tennessee State. This is Notre Dame's first time ever playing an FCS opponent, given that it is also Eddie George's head coach for Tennessee State. Should be an easy Notre Dame win there. The Luke Fickell era starts in Madison as the Badgers face off against the Bulls of Buffalo, not the Bills, the Bulls. I expect Wisconsin to win this quite easily, and I am excited to see how this Luke Fickell offense works at Wisconsin. I think it's going to be a good year for them. Auburn host 1-0 UMass, a UMass team that won on the road last week against New Mexico State. I don't think UMass are going to be, fighting for a win here, but the point spread, I believe, as of now is 35.5, somewhere around there. I think that they can easily cover that. Peyton Thorne most likely starting at quarterback for Auburn. Going to be interesting to see how that plays out there. I don't think it's going to work out well. On the Big Ten Network, Maryland hosts Townsend. Probably an easy Maryland win there. It's early season Maryland, so they'll look like, a top 20 team. And then once they play their first real opponent, they'll really fall off the cliff. On the CBS Sports Network, you have Western Kentucky facing off against USF, a USF team that is going to be bottom of the American this year, and I'm not expecting a ton from Western Kentucky this year, but I still think they win their conference because the CUSA just doesn't have talent in it. So I expect Western Kentucky to win this. On the ACC network at Acrisure Stadium, formerly Heinz Field, Pitt host Wofford. Pitt most likely win this, but they'll probably make it difficult on themselves. And then on ESPN Plus, Cincinnati in their Big 12 debut, but they're not playing a Big 12 team. It's their first game as a Big 12 conference member, I should have said. They play Eastern Kentucky. I expect Cincinnati to win that game. Also the first game of the Scott Satterfield era, so going to be interesting to see how his era plays out for the Bearcats. Like I said, if I had to pick one upset here, I think I'm going to go with the Northern Iowa State game. There's not a ton here, but I think that's the closest one. So moving on to the last game. In that 3:30 time slot, Appalachian State play host to Gardner-Webb, the running Bulldogs. I expect Appalachian State to win this game quite easily. 4 o'clock on the SEC Network, Mississippi State in the first official game of the it's not the first official game of the post-Mike Leach era. It's the second, but it's the first regular season game with Mike Leach not at the helm of Mississippi State, which is just sad the way that everything ended there, obviously, with his death. Hopefully, Mississippi State uses that as motivation this year, and they can, have a really good season for Mike. One of the weirder games on this slate, Cal, the Pac-12 Cal, traveled to Denton, Texas to face off against North Texas. Quite a weird game on here. I'd say it's probably the weirdest of the weekend. Honestly, North Texas probably win this game. I don't really know if that would be considered an upset, but I think they probably win that. Colgate travel up to Syracuse at the Carrier Dome, even though it's like JMA Wireless Stadium or something like that. It's the Carrier Dome. They face off against Syracuse. Bryant traveled to Las Vegas, traveled to Allegiant Stadium to face off against the UNLV Rebels. This game also could not figure out if there's a stream for it, so it's going to be somewhere, but I don't know where. Then we get to the 6 p.m. window. The back-to-back national champions start their journey to hopefully get a third title as the Georgia Bulldogs face off against UT Martin, the Skyhawks. Georgia wins this game by 50. Charlotte, the first game of the Biff Poggi era, face off against South Carolina State. I just don't know about either of these teams. FAU Casey Thompson, his first game as starting quarterback for the Owls, face off against Monmouth. The Citadel traveled to Georgia Southern. All these games in the 6 p.m. window on ESPN+. Bucknell travel to James Madison, I should say. James Madison coming off a very good year where they couldn't make a bowl because they were ineligible because they moved up from the FCS, which is still a stupid rule, but it's still there. Marshall face host to Albany. Then we get to 6:30 time slot. There's only 2 games here. Number 6 USC host Nevada. Caleb Williams had a great performance last weekend against San Jose State. But that defense still leaves a much to be desired there. It's going to be interesting to see if there were any changes from week 0 to week 1 on that USC defense. And FIU play host to Maine. Probably going to be one of FIU's few opportunities to win a game this year. Should be interesting to see if they can get that done. We're starting to get into those primetime slots. Southeast Missouri travel to Manhattan to face off against the number 16th ranked Kansas State Wildcats. I think Kansas State's a little bit overrated this year. I think they'll be a good team. I don't think they're the 16th best team in the nation. That's what I think. Out of this group, if I had to pick an upset, there's not really a ton here. If you're considering Cal losing because they're a Power 5 team going to a Group of 5 team, I guess that. But other than that, there's really nothing here. So we move on to our last full graphic here, full 14 games. Number 22, Texas A&M play host to the New Mexico Lobos on ESPN at 7 p.m. Jimbo Fisher, that seat gets hot every year, it seems, as the 8-4s keep, rolling out with the amount of money spent on that team through NIL. On the NFL Network, ULM play host to Army. Should be quite an interesting game to watch. Obviously, the triple option offense of Army. Always a treat to watch, but then you have Terry Bowden on the other sideline for ULM. It's going to be interesting to see if he has any tricks in the book this year for the Warhawks. A 1-0 Vanderbilt team play host to Alabama A&M. Washington State traveled to Colorado State to face off against the Rams at 7 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. This is a big year for Washington State, I think. Last guaranteed year, I'd say, in a power conference, given that they don't know where they're going to be next year. Should be interesting to see if that leads to any motivation for them this upcoming year. Then you have Texas State traveling to Waco to face off against the Baylor, I should say. A Baylor team that I'm expecting to be halfway decent this year. I don't know if a lot of people are also thinking that. It doesn't really seem that way. I still think Dave Aranda figures out something this year with those Bears. A very sneaky good game here. UTSA traveled down to Houston to face off against the Cougars at 7 p.m. on FS1. Houston unveiled some new uniforms today that pay tribute to the Houston Oilers uniforms that just look absolutely outstanding. UTSA is one of the favorites in the American and one of the favorites to be that Group of 5 representative in the New Year's Six Bowl games. So these two teams should put on an absolutely outstanding battle. Oklahoma State hosts Central Arkansas at 7 p.m. on ESPN+. Also on ESPN+ at the same time, Memphis play host to Bethune-Cookman. And Troy host Stephen F. Austin. Then we get into the 7:30 window on the SEC Network. Number 4, Alabama, still have no idea who their quarterback's going to be. Face off against Middle Tennessee State. Even though we don't know who the quarterback for Alabama is going to be, it's most likely going to be Jalen Milroe. I still expect Alabama to win this game by a lot because they're Alabama. Then the first Big Ten Saturday night game on NBC. Number 7, Penn State play host to West Virginia. Penn State, I believe, is currently like a 21-point favorite, somewhere around there. I still expect them to win big here. I think this is Neil Brown's last run with West Virginia before he finally gets fired, just after year of lackluster performance with them. Another big game on the slate South Carolina and North Carolina head to Charlotte to face off in the Duke's Mayo Classic. A lot of people have North Carolina favored in this game. I still like South Carolina myself. I think they're the much better team. The most overrated team, I think, so far this year is North Carolina, and I think this is why they're going to lose this game. Once again, in the 7:30 window on the Big Ten Network, Toledo face off against Illinois in Champaign. I kind of like the idea of Toledo winning this game. I feel like that they could, sneak away with like a 21-20 victory or something like that. It should be a close game, I would think, even though Illinois seems to be much improved this year. Then as we move into our final graphic for this college football Saturday, week 1, on CBS at 7:30, Texas Tech traveled to Wyoming. Another quite odd game on here. It's kind of up there with Cal going to Denton to face off against North Texas. Texas Tech travel up to Laramie to face off against Wyoming. I still expect Texas Tech to win this game. They got a big game next week. I got to make sure you're not looking ahead to that game. Then another game that could have major implications on that group of 5 New Year's 6 team that gets that bid. South Alabama traveled to New Orleans to face off against number 24 Tulane, 8 p.m. ESPNU. I'm excited to watch this game. I think both of these teams could be quite good this year, and it should be a very interesting watch because I think, like I said, both teams seem to be quite good this year. Obviously, Tulane was that group of 5 representative last year, won the Cotton Bowl against USC, so it's going to be seeing if they can pull a Cincinnati and go back-to-back with New Year's 6 bowl bids. Old Dominion face off against Virginia Tech. Both teams were quite bad last year, and I don't remember if it was last year or the year before that Old Dominion and Virginia Tech faced off in Norfolk at Old Dominion, and Old Dominion came out with the win. Given that it's at Lane Stadium, I'm going to take Virginia Tech here just because I think that home field advantage is going to matter, but I don't think much separates either of these teams at this moment. Northwestern State face off against the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Western Illinois traveled to Las Cruces to face off against New Mexico State. Incarnate Word traveled to El Paso to face off against the UTEP Miners. And now we are getting into the 10 o'clock window here. Well, the 10 to 10:30 window. So these are your late night games. Not a ton on here, which is quite disappointing, but here we are anyways. Northern Arizona travel to Arizona to face off against the Wildcats. That sounded weird, but you knew what I meant. Tucson. They traveled to Tucson to face off against the Wildcats of Arizona. Sam Houston State, their first game at the FBS level, face off against a BYU team playing in a conference for the first time since 2009, I believe it is. That was their last year in the Mountain West, and then they went independent, and now they are in the Big 12. Then in the 10:30 window, there's 2 games here, one on ESPN, one on CBS Sports Network. Coastal Carolina traveled to the Rose Bowl to face off against UCLA. Chip Kelly, I think, is going to have a good UCLA team this year. Garrett McCall coming back to Coastal Carolina for what seems like his 8th year. I still expect UCLA to win this game. And then the final game on this slate, Idaho State traveled to Snapdragon Stadium to face off against the 1-0 Aztecs of San Diego State. That game's on CBS Sports Network at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So the games I'm truly looking forward to this weekend. I'm very interested to watch this North Carolina, South Carolina game. I think both teams have a lot to prove. That South Alabama Tulane game, huge game. I think it's going to have major New Year's 6 implications, even though it's only week 1. Should be a quite interesting watch that I'm looking forward to. And honestly, like some of the games that are on right now, like this I almost said Georgia, Florida-Utah game and the Minnesota-Nebraska game. Both games are quite entertaining in their own ways right now. I'm excited to watch both of those. It's a full slate of college football. It's so great to be back watching these student athletes play. Can't wait to see what this season brings. So given that is going to be it for Pigskin Perspectives today. Full preview of this will most likely be back on Saturday or early Sunday morning, somewhere around there, to recap all these games and bring you a preview of the Sunday games, and then the one Monday night game. Should be interesting to see how those play out. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you stumbled across this channel or this video and you enjoyed what you watched, like, subscribe, tell anybody you know about the channel. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will be back sometime this weekend to recap all of this action here on the Nick Burt YouTube channel and Pigskin Perspectives. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you again quite soon.